Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 75.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. Today's episode is myself and Dr. Mike Gibson. Today we talk about probably one of what turned out to be our favorite podcast episodes of all time. It's a conversation that it's never too often to have in chiropractic or in any business, and it's one that I think needs to be heard. It was raw. It was to the point. The content is not deep by any means. It's not strategic by any means. It's just exactly what you likely need to hear today. So enjoy today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. Hey, Mike, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Thanks, Jamie. Looking forward to this episode.
Oh, Mike, we are definitely looking forward to this one. And we always look forward when we get together and able to have these conversations. But guys, this is something that I don't know if it's something we've been thinking about for a long time. It's something that comes up on a regular basis, I think, and definitely in our discussions when we're sitting around, when you sit around and rant about whatever's on your mind after a long week of working with different clients. And by all means, we have great clients at Life by Design. That said, there's always one thing that I think across the board that can be done better. And Mike, what do you think that one thing is?
They don't know the magic formula for day 2. That's not right?
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's actually not the answer, guys, by the way. And in fact, it does bring up a good point, which is it would be very valuable to know the magic formula for day 2. And I'd be happy to teach you the magic formula for day 2, as Mike would. And it is obviously valuable to have systems and procedures and to have a great team and to do all these things that meet the requirements of a successful business and practice. But really, when it comes right down to it, if I had to look across the board and say, what's one thing that, every single person, probably even myself, to some degree, there's always room for improvement. What's the one thing that could be done better? And it's work. Like, it really is just getting shit done. And getting it done consistently and working hard. And, we would much rather have you do the wrong stuff, or at least in some part the wrong stuff, and work your tail off at getting the wrong stuff done. You're going to get some right stuff done, and you're going to get a lot more done because you're working so hard and your work ethic is so high and so strong, versus not doing anything at all. And Mike, I'm guessing since we're doing this podcast, this is something that you see as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's, it's not, like you said, I know for myself, we have a bunch of clients that we both work with. Like, we have some awesome clients, and I'm just thinking about all of them right now running through the list, and, they're all doing really well. And I think a big part of that is because they all work their ass off. Like, they work hard and they put in, long hours. And it's more when I'm kind of doing consults or just kind of meeting new docs, and we usually sit down and have a little chat about kind of where they're at, and I try to ask as many questions as I can to really understand the situation, to see if I can help. And that's when this topic really comes up. I throw my time to come to the conclusion. I'm like, I know what's wrong. You're just not working hard. You're not putting in enough time.
Right.
So that's where I see it. I see it most often, and it's obviously easy for us to sit on the outside and say these things. And, I can just say for myself, that's one thing. I've done a lot of the wrong things over time. I'm not the world's best adjuster. I'm good. I'm not the best.
I think you're actually quite good, Mike. So you're not being nice enough to yourself.
Thank you. For many, many years, I didn't do any marketing. I always had the systems down. But there's a lot of things about business and about practice that I'm not good at. And I can tell you, though, that the one thing that made me very successul is just because I worked my ass off. I work, and I continue to do so. If you know me, I work hard at everything that I do. And that's just kind of part of who I am. But my point is this: I couldn't agree with you more to the fact that, I've done a lot of the wrong things, and I've learned along the way. But the reason I've been successful is that it's because of how much time and effort and just that work ethic that just was instilled in me, mostly by my dad. So I think I couldn't agree more with what you've said, and that, work ethic, putting in the time is the most critical thing for docs if they want to be successful.
Well, if you think about just what was the example you used, I believe, in the beginning stage? It was, you were talking about in the pre-show about a restaurant or any other business, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I was just something I was thinking about. It's, a lot of times one of the things that, I ask docs is, okay, tell me about what you do in a given week. Lay out your schedule for me. And a lot of times, we often in chiropractic have, many docs have 3-day schedules, and I recommend that. But what I quickly realize is that they're also, they're working on their practice, right? In their practice 3 days a week, and they're taking 4 free days, essentially, where they're taking the time off. Maybe there's a little bit of business work sprinkled in, but my point being is that in chiropractic, the reality is that if you've ever read any of Michael Gerber's stuff, we are both the technician and the business owner. And so that creates a challenge for us. And, he contends very strongly in his books that, you can't really do both to do either well. And so what happens oftentimes is that, I hear these docs and they're spending their 18 hours as a technician and a couple hours at most being a business owner. And my example to you is that, can you imagine if you were a restaurant owner or any business owner for that sake, if you were a gym owner and you put 2 hours a week into actually growing, building, how about just sustaining the business, marketing, planning, all the things, team training, all that stuff. Imagine you were a business owner and you only put a few hours a week into anything that's actually going to grow the business. And you spent 18 hours, actually, delivering your product and service, which is great, but you only spent 2 hours. How successful do you think that restaurant would be?
Yeah, exactly. Not very. And so, that was kind of my point, is that I think, putting in the 20 hours a week obviously isn't nearly enough, period, but there's not nearly enough of that time that's, the hard work, which I think the adjusting part and seeing, that's why most chiropractors got into this. They enjoy that. They're good at it. They love it. They're passionate about it. Not so much when it comes to the business part, and it's reflected in the amount of time that they spend on it. But that's the biggest thing I see, is just people aren't putting enough time into their business, and as an add-on to that comment, is they're not spending enough time actually working on their business to expect any significant growth. Well, I think you make a lot of great points, and if people look at, docs or, speakers, and they're on the stage, and it's a badge of honor to say, well, I work, 9 hours a week. And, I think you could probably, if you dug into some of these people who have, say, busier, successful offices, and maybe they work 9 hours a week and they have some associates, number one, they've built to that point. That's an important point, which we'll come back to. But number two, I'm going to bet that if you actually looked at their schedule, they don't just work 9 hours a week. They might check people for 9 hours a week, but there's probably a lot of other things that go into that. And I think of myself, I think of you, you see patients 1 day a week, correct?
Yes.
I see patients a day and a half. It's, it's almost like, it's a busier practice, so I wouldn't say it's break time, but it's really a breeze, right? You show up, you check people, everybody's, generally upbeat, and everybody's laid back, and you're just kind of doing what you do. And that's what a chiropractor wants to do. It's all the other stuff. And I thought about this Wednesday as a great example. I got to where I was going to be for work, and I don't think from the time I sat down until the time I got up and left at 5:30 that my fingers even stopped typing on the keyboard. And the projects I was working on, or the emails I was working on, or the landing page, or the Facebook ads, or whatever it was nonstop for whatever that time is, 9, 10 hours. And to be able to repeat that multiple days throughout the week, that's the kind of work that we're talking about. And that's the kind of work that needs to get done if you expect to build your business. And when I get a message, or somebody, contacts us, or you do a consult with somebody and they say, oh yeah, I'm just having problems growing my practice. And, as Mike already alluded to, well, how much time, I ask this question all the time, how much time do you spend working on your business? I think at minimum, Mike, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, if you're in practice and you're working, say, 3 days a week or more, I would say minimum 10 hours a week working on your business? What do you think?
Yes, I would agree. That's probably a good estimate. That would be a minimum. But I think this is important, is that I think it depends on who you are and where you are at in practice. Because I don't think, I don't want you guys to hear Jamie and I suggesting that working 60-hour weeks should be a badge of honor and we should be proud of that. I think you should do that if it's necessary. I think you should do that if you're early in practice and you're not where you want to be. Right. If you want to be, I think the ultimate goal. Let's talk about this for a little bit. As many of you know, I trained with Strategic Coach for a while, and I love everything that Dan Sullivan promotes. I highly recommend it. And there's so many. I'm just bringing him up as an example, but there's so many business coaches out there that suggest similar. And what I think, and I know why people gravitate towards it, because we all want to take more time off. We all want more time with our family. But essentially, the selling feature of the program, or one of the big ones anyway, is that we're going to show you how to work less and less. We're going to show you how to practice 1 day a week and spend the other 6 days with your family. You see the books out there, the 5-day week, 5-day weekend, and I could go on and on. But here's what people forget: is they forget the context around that. Dan Sullivan, for example, because I've been in the program and know, is that he is trying to teach a bunch of successful, established, for the most part, entrepreneurs who are doing well and just want to take the next step. Because if you really look at a lot of the strategies that he recommends, if a new grad, if a new doc, just out of school or just starting a new practice or what have you, but new in the game, not nearly at the level they want to be, if they were to employ those strategies, I do not think they would work nearly as well. They would struggle, because it glorifies taking more time off, which is great, but the fact is that if you're early in practice, I strongly believe that you need to earn that first, right? Take 5, 6, 7 weeks of holidays. That's all great at one point. And if you've earned it, good for you. I think that should be the objective, working towards earning more, as I say, working harder, relaxing more, right? Is that you're working smarter in the hours that you're working, but you're taking the opportunity to take more time to relax, more free time, more time with your family. But that has to be earned. And if you're not currently where you need to be, right, taking all that time off it's going to hold you back. It's as simple as that. It's going to hold you back. If you're not where you are right now, you better be working those 40, 60-hour weeks to get there. When you've got there and you've earned it and you've earned a little bit of cushion, then that's when you want to start to implement those strategies to really grow and see growth in your business, because you've earned it, but not before.
Well, I think about, the early days when I was in practice, and you could probably think about the same ones. For me, I remember so many nights sitting at the front desk till literally 11 o'clock at night, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, back the next day. I would work every single weekend. I'd work all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And as we said, it's not necessarily a badge of honor. More importantly, it was what was required of me. And that's the point, right? This is what is required of me to accomplish what I have decided that I would like to accomplish. Heck, in the beginning, it was what was required of me to have dinner on my table. And not enough people have that mindset. And whether it goes back to us having cushy lives, our parents have done a good job where we were able to have things in our life that maybe, generations before they weren't able to have. And we see lots of that. And you hear people talk about that with kids in the current generation. People have moved up the scale and they've made it easier and easier on their kids. And so that work ethic isn't passed down. And I know for me, and I probably might the same for you, Cracio, Rochelle, one of the things I'm really cognizant of with my children is, although we've been very successful and I could give my kids all kinds of things that I never had, and I had a lot as it was, I want to make sure that I'm teaching them not just the value of those things and where those things come from and the exchange of value, but the importance of working for those, the importance of how to manage when you fail, the importance of resiliency. There was days early in practice where I know, Mike, you've talked a bit about having the fat cat syndrome early. I was the opposite. I was extremely unsuccessful, but extremely passionate. And I couldn't pay my bills. I went into crazy amounts of debt. So working harder was the only thing I knew at the time. And it was my childhood and my upbringing that really instilled in me those character traits. And I don't see those enough in people. I don't see that willingness to grind and that willingness to do the things that, you know, you have to do. It's almost as if, well, I shouldn't have to do that. And all I can say is, but you do. Until you don't. And then when you don't, then you can make a new decision. Then you can take 7 weeks holidays. Then you can work a day a week. You can do whatever you want when you're able to do whatever you want. But until that time comes, stop worrying about what's not working. Stop complaining about, you know, why things aren't getting to where they're going, and just get to work.
I love it. I couldn't have said it better. And I think that's the message that some of you, not all of the people listening, because there's lots of people out there that are working their butts off, but there's a group of docs listening right now, and I think that's a really important message for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And today's podcast isn't going to be a long one, guys, because that is the message. It's, you know, you need to earn your freedom. Really, when it comes down to it, we were kind of using the example of how financial gurus will say, pay yourself 10% first. And that's wonderful if I have money. Yeah. Right. And so in the beginning, it was somebody else's money. It was the bank's money. I wasn't going to pay myself 10%. I didn't need 10% of whatever I had sitting in a line of credit to live on. What I needed was to grow my business. What I needed was to grow myself. And so I literally, in the first 3 years of my practice life, I literally lived on $200 a week. I remember I did the whole envelope system from Dave Ramsey. I had $200, and that was my groceries. That was my gas. And that was my spending money every single week. If my $200 was gone, I was eating ramen noodles or whatever I needed to eat, right, in order to survive. I had hit a point where I was willing to and had already started to explore living in my office. And I'm not talking about the second place where we actually owned the building, like living in a commercial space in the back hallway. I had a back hallway. It was about 30 feet long. It was maybe 2 feet, 3 feet wide, Mike. I had fully decided I was selling the house I had, which I already had 2 roommates and 3 at a time living in it so I could pay for it and have extra money. As you know, I had a 2002 Toyota Corolla with no window in it that was taped up. I pull up to I remember our first meeting when Mike came on the company at Life by Design and CEO. I pull up with my Corolla, window taped up. Mike's got a nice, Audi Q5, and he's probably thinking, what did I get myself into here?
We have to pull up. We've got to find a picture of that to put on the podcast page.
It's on Facebook somewhere. It'll come up one of these days.
We'll find it.
We'll definitely put it in there. Hey, that's actually probably, Mike, your shot for the podcast.
Yeah.
Is that one. So guys, we'll put that in there. But that's really the point. Is for the first many years, it was hard. It was hard, man. For me, it was hard. And anybody who says practice is easy, good for you, because it was hard. It was stressful. It was a strain. It was painful. It was emotional. But at the same time, it helped develop my resiliency to be able to take risks and to be able to have the tolerance to push through difficult times. I mean, Mike, this is the funny part. We're talking about this now, and I know you've had a similar experience. I had a big flood earlier this year, but here we are today, and now it hasn't rained in 4 days here, just to kind of put this in context. I'm in my office. Charlie's Cafe with 7 new staff is about to open on Monday, so I'm learning a new business at the same time that I'm training people, and we're ready to launch on Monday. I have 6 leaks in my roof, yet it hasn't rained in 4 days, by the way, and it's still leaking as I sit here right now. The front of my building, which was just fully freshly repainted, all has started to peel, my $3,000 freshly painted job. And yet, what do I need to do? I need to get to work, right? I still need to do everything that I need to do to run all the things that I need to run, to do the podcast, to do the coaching, to run the different businesses. Yes, I work a day and a half in practice, but it's the other 50 hours a week that define the success of this business. And I know I'm not alone. This is what you do. It's what lots of other people do. And the point in sharing the story is, 1, you got to get to work. 2, you got to earn it if you want to have that freedom. And 3, and you can maybe finish on this for me, but 3, it never ends. It never ends. If you're running a business, let alone 5 businesses, it never ends. The shit that you deal with is a day in and day out thing. And if you wake up one day like, oh, why is this happening? And why is this happening again and again? Guess what? When you solve this problem, you got another one coming down the pipe. And if you're not ready for that, it's going to crush you and you're going to be done.
Yeah, Jamie, I mean, I really I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, what else is there to say? So that's the message today, guys. Get to work. Now, if you do the right stuff, sure makes things a lot easier, right? So, whether it's coming to camp or whether it's learning the systems, whether it's listening to the podcast, you got to get the right stuff. That's a big part of it. But if you can get the right stuff and you can match that up with working your tail off, and you can do that day in and day out, week in and week out, month and year and decade over and over and over again, that's when you see the real rewards from success. And that's where you've earned that ability to have the freedom to do more of other things that you want to do in addition. Because, the last thing I'll say is I don't want you to hear this podcast and to think that we're complaining about the work. I love the work. Do not hear that this is a complaint. I love it. I love the fact that I got stuff to do. I love the fact that we're opening a new business. I love the fact that it's crazy. That's what I love about it. But you're going to have to take that on. You're going to have to do the work, because without that, none of this is ever going to happen. So guys, go to the show notes, check everything out there, Life by Design for Chiropractors /podcast. And as always, thank you so much for listening to Life by Design, the voice of reason in chiropractic.